world. This is the Fan and Fanatic Podcast. I'm Parker Gerlecki, a.k.a. the Fan and Fanatic, and with me as always is my broadcast partner,
Dad,
a.k.a. Ryan Gerlecki. I've got a passion for all things sports. So, on the Fan and Fanatic Podcast, we'll talk to anyone and everyone from all over the world of sports who will sit still long enough to answer my questions.
that's right. Now, as a result of complications from severe brain damage at birth, unfortunately, Parker will never be able to physically play sports. But that cannot and has never stopped him from loving everything about sports and dreaming of a career in broadcasting. So each of our guests graciously gives of their time on this podcast to invest in Parker's dream and to help him be part of the sports world he loves so dearly.
Now, let's play ball! Welcome back, Fanatic Addicts, to another high-octane episode of the Fan and Fanatic Podcast. It's my absolute honor to introduce my guest today, Mr. Ken Potosnak. So, Ken, first off, why don't you start everyone by telling who you are, where you're from, and your connection to the world of sports?
Well, Parker, I'm excited to be on with you. And sort of my world of sports began as a college player at Randolph Macon College, which is right outside of Richmond, Virginia. And Randolph Macon has had an outstanding small college program there for 50 years now. And when I left Randolph Macon, I really wanted to get into the coaching profession and was able to do that. And along the way, I had stops at the Citadel, Furman University, Wake Forest University, South Carolina, Auburn, and East Carolina University. So I had about 29 years in the Southeast coaching at a lot of great schools and had a chance to recruit a lot of great guys along the way.
War Eagle. So what did you do at Auburn? Like, what was your position at Auburn?
So at Auburn, as well as all the other schools I just mentioned, I was the assistant basketball coach and, did that for a number of universities and Auburn being one, obviously.
Yes. My mother's whole side of the family are Auburn fans, actually. So nice. Well, War Eagle. And I'm glad we finally got rid of the guy.
Well,
Brian Harsin. Ugh, I can't believe I said his name.
Well, I will tell you, Parker, I'm very pro-coach, and I really know what goes into coaching profession. And, I know that from a football side, I've always watched football live, especially when you coach basketball in the Southeast and you coach basketball in the SEC, you have a chance to see a lot of great football and get to know a lot of the great football coaches out there. And they have a lot on them, and sometimes the leash is short, which they say. And I'm sure that it'll quickly get turned around with Coach Freeze, and Auburn will be back into a point where they would like to be again.
What do you do now?
So now I think you know some friends of mine because they reached out to me.
Dylan Evans, right?
Yeah, Dylan's a great friend, and Danny Downing, and really all the staff there at Johnson Ferry. Years ago, when I was at Furman University in the 1990s coaching, I started basketball camps in the Atlanta area, and with Johnson Ferry being one of our first spots for one of our first locations in the late 90s, early 2000s. So my father and I started basketball camps that we still run in the Atlanta area. We have 11 locations in Atlanta, and we also run them in North Carolina and South Carolina in some of the areas where I coached before. So still enjoy coaching, really enjoy coaching the younger players now. Get a lot of enjoyment out of that. It's very different than coaching in the SEC or ACC. It's a different dynamic, but get a tremendous amount of joy from that. And and working with great people like Dylan and Danny and the staff at Johnson Ferry, as well as the other local churches in Atlanta.
So you mentioned you coached at Furman. Were they ever known as the Furman University Christian Knights, or is that just some college lore?
Well, Parker, I tell you what, that is a great question. When I went to Furman, I figured out what a paladin was. A paladin was a knight on a horse, but you'd have to look up the true definition of that. But that's a possibility. Furman's a great institution. It's been around a lot of years, so that's a definite possibility. I think you got that figured out, maybe.
I feel like I know why they changed their name to Paladins. If you think of the acronym, I'm not going to say it because we're going to get demonetized. Anyways, all right, moving on. What is your favorite thing about coaching?
My favorite thing about coaching is the relationships that I had a chance to make with the players and the guys that I worked with. And along the way, those relationships and relationships with people in media or, people that you recruited, but maybe that went other places, or just the people-to-people type relationships that you build throughout all those years in coaching was a really, really fun thing for me. And then seeing a lot of young people go and become professionals in life. A lot of them became professionals on the court. But I was always more concerned about seeing them become professionals in life and watching those guys grow and, find their way after basketball.
I kind of have a hardball question for you. Did you have a favorite place that you coached?
Favorite place that I coached? I tell you what, I loved coaching at the Citadel, which is the military college of South Carolina.
Yep.
It was one of my first stops. But I always valued so many of the things there and so many of the relationships that I built there. Certainly it was great, coaching in the SEC and ACC and a lot of stops along the way. But the Citadel, the city of Charleston, really coached some outstanding players during that era, and all of whom have gone on to do great things. That was a special place, being able to coach at the Citadel.
Here's kind of a two-part question for you. Part one, what is your favorite stadium or arena that you visited during your, as a coach?
Favorite arena that you visited?
Like for an away game or a neutral site game?
Yeah, I tell you, Cameron Indoor Stadium at Duke, because of just the closeness, 7,000 fans right on top of you. It was a special place to go play at Duke. But, playing at the Smith Center in front of 24,000 people, 23,000 at a much bigger venue in Chapel Hill certainly comes to mind as well. But as you go through each league, it doesn't matter if you're in the Southern Conference or playing in a small college in a rivalry environment. Every time you walk into a rivalry-like opponent and walk into their gym, it sort of leaves a mark on you. So, was really fortunate to go into a lot of different buildings and different leagues. But, those are two that sort of stick out because of their fan base and, because of just the traditions of both those programs and arenas.
So how have you seen basketball change over the years?
Basketball, that's a great question, Parker. Basketball, the biggest change over the years is, I think, the growth of the NCAA tournament. And, in the late 80s, early 90s, basketball was certainly popular, but nowhere near where it is today because of the NCAA tournament and March Madness. And, basketball is leading into March and leading into sort of a period of late winter, early spring that in most parts of the country is a little colder. People aren't outside yet. Football's over. Baseball quite hasn't started. And it falls in that month-long period where everybody gets so excited to maybe even for the first time in a year watch some games or watch their new favorite team. Just watching the NCAA tournament grow and the revenue that it's just built for the NCAA and for the Division I institutions. Watching that grow has been a huge change from where it was 30 years ago, certainly from a monetary standpoint. And now with the NIL and players getting paid for their name, image, and likeness over the last 2 to 3 years here, that's certainly a huge change from the past in terms of what players can get and what they could receive and so forth. So a lot of changes in I think most of those changes, Parker, sort of revolves around money in the biggest changes in the game over the years.
So did you ever coach a team in the tournament? Like when you were coaching, have you ever made it to the tournament?
Yeah, I was able in small college to play in a tournament and coach several teams in the NCAA tournament, and those are special times and certainly things that you always remember. So,
so you did get to coach in March Madness.
Yes.
So tell me how that was like. Did you get to coach against like some of the great coaches, like I don't know, Mike Krzyzewski or Dean Smith or Roy Williams or Jim Boeheim or any of those guys? Did you get to coach against them?
So, when you're in certain leagues, obviously, when you're in the ACC, when I was at Wake Forest, we played against, the North Carolinas and the Dukes. And even if you're in a smaller setting like East Carolina, sometimes you play the North Carolina and Dukes, and Syracuse is in what they call non-league games.
Yep.
So, had the chance to do that. And in the NCAA tournament, to go to the Sweet 16, actually in Atlanta, in the first tournament I had a chance to be a part of, Alabama beat us in a very close game. And I know you're a history guy as it comes to sports. I can tell that already.
Mm-hmm.
The old building before Phillips Arena.
The Omni, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, you got it.
Which then was turned into a hotel.
The Omni was, I guess, turned into a hotel potentially there, and but that was the venue in the late '80s, early '90s. And remember playing Alabama in a really close game and losing to Alabama. And Alabama had five of their starters all played in the NBA. So there was a talent-full era there, and where most guys stayed in college, the full 4 years back then.
Did you get to coach, in your coaching career, did you get to coach, like any of the some of the current NBA stars?
So along the way, I think there was probably 10 different guys that I coached on the bench and was on teams with that ended up making an NBA team at some point. Most of those guys have retired. Most of the times, most of the guys' NBA careers were very, very short, a lot shorter than you would ever think. So did have the opportunity to do that, and that's always great to see when guys have a chance to play at the highest level, because as you know, there's only 30 teams and 450 players in the NBA. So anytime that you have a chance to coach a few of those guys that make it to that level, that's a special thing, and certainly something for them that's not achieved very often by many guys.
So, hold on, wait. Oh shoot, I think so sorry. Who was the most famous player that you coached? Do you know?
I think the most famous player, the guy who had the longest career was a guy by the name of Rodney Rogers. And he was at Wake Forest years ago, and he played, I think, 12 to 13 seasons in the NBA. But probably the most famous name that people will ever remember, certainly should remember, is a guy by the name of Randolph Childress. And Randolph Childress, when it comes to the NCAA tournament and ACC tournament every year, Randolph Childress was a really, really special guard at Wake Forest to really put Wake Forest on the map, or back on the map, so to speak, in the 1990s. And as he led many of his teams deep into the NCAA tournament, and was a really, really special guard. He ended up being a first-round draft pick of the Detroit Pistons and played the NBA for a while, and had a great career overseas.
So out of all your experiences, what was the greatest moment or memory?
Greatest moment or memory?
Yep.
I think the greatest moment, anytime you win a championship, is something that you always remember. And so I would say at South Carolina, beating Michigan in the NIT final, and prior to that game, beating Louisville in the semifinal. And I guess it was 2005 is a special memory. And at East Carolina, in a smaller tournament, and you'll know this, maybe some of your listeners wouldn't, but there's actually the NCAA tournament that has 68 teams, obviously.
Uh-huh.
It generally has 32. Before there used to be 40, and then there's a third tournament called the CIT.
Oh yeah, the college basketball invitational.
So I think maybe it's the College Insiders Tournament, CIT. I don't know how they sort of list that, but when we were at East Carolina, we had a chance to play in it, played some great teams along the way, a really good Evansville team, and had a chance to go out and win the tournament out in Utah in front of a huge crowd called Weber State. And Weber State is where Damian Lillard played.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Fantastic basketball school on the top of a mountain in Utah. And but anytime you can win a championship, whether it's as a player or when you can win the last game of your season, that doesn't happen often for very many teams. So I think when you win the last game of your season, those are the things from a purely a basketball game perspective that you have a tendency to comes right to mind in terms of special experiences.
So you said in one of the postseason tournaments you played Louisville you beat Louisville in the championship and you beat Wake Forest in the championship and Louisville to get to the championship. Is that right? Or do I have the order reversed?
Yeah, you almost got it there. Louisville was in the semifinal game and Michigan was the final game. And
and which team was this? Like, which team were you coaching at the time when this happened?
We were at the University of South Carolina.
Oh, yes. The Gamecocks. Spurs up, right?
Yeah, for the Gamecocks to beat up on Louisville and Michigan, those are two basketball powerhouses. So to go and beat both those teams in Madison Square Garden was a special few days. So something you always remember. Spurs
up, my friend. Spurs up.
Spurs up. Well, you're is it War Eagle or Spurs? I mean, you must love the SEC.
Oh, I'm a neutral fan. There's a long story behind that, if you don't mind.
You're neutral? Well, why? I know this is your podcast asking the question, but what's the neutrality about?
So there's a story behind this, if you don't mind me.
Yeah.
So anyhow, I'm an avid so I live in Atlanta, as you know.
Yeah.
So I don't know if Danny Downing has told you this, but I'm at CHOA Miracle Kid Children's Healthcare of Atlanta.
Okay.
And because of this, I was able to, or like, I don't know if Danny or Dylan has ever told you that, but anyways, because of my opportunities, as you know, I'm a avid sports fan. And so, a few years ago, I got to interview, I believe it was 2018, the final game of the Atlanta Hawks before the big State Farm Arena renovation. And they were playing the Philadelphia 76ers.
Okay.
And I got to interview all the players, right? So at one point during one of the interviews, I look into the camera and I'm like, shout out to every NBA player, even you, LeBron, even though I've hated you for my life. So then the Hawks grabbed that clip, tweeted it to LeBron, and my dad told me that they had done this, and I was demoralized. So my dad, being the loving father he is, he tweeted LeBron and made sure, like, if he was okay, like if he's seen the video, if he was okay, if he had seen the video or if not. And then, but ever since then, I haven't picked favorites.
Okay. Well, hey, the one thing about the media, and I know that you're going to make it big, I can hear it in your voice. Okay.
Yeah, like that's the thing for sports. Like if you work on a national sports radio station, like a national station like ESPN or CBS, you have to act like even though you might have a favorite team, you have to act as if you're impartial.
Yeah, I think at times, but there are other times it seems like a lot of these people in media, they're willing to take a side and they're willing to talk about some certain hard things. That's why I asked you on the front end. I was afraid of the hard questions, but you've been pretty easy on me, so I guess you're being pretty neutral tonight.
Thank you, sir. Oh, and here's the next question. Out of all the schools you coached, which one, out of all of the traditions done, at those schools, which one is your favorite? Like, what do you think what is your favorite tradition in college basketball? Or just any college, or just college sports in general?
Well, and you coach at a military school. You have what they call the Corps of Cadets, or Keydets if you're at VMI, or Cadets if you're at Citadel, or you have, if you're at the Air Force or Naval Academy. Anytime that the entire Corps attends a game, that is a really special tradition. Maybe if you're, working at a military school, if you're working at, some other schools, there's traditions that within each school that I think I've worked that are, special to that institution. But I think it was always a special thing at the Citadel when the entire Corps would come to a basketball game. It was a great home court advantage, and to have 2,000 every student on campus there, that was special for our players, and always a special game when we would play some of our rivals.
So Keydet is an alternate pronunciation of cadet, is that right?
I think the Keydets are at VMI, and they spell it Keydets for some reason, and I'm not sure what that is, but you knew about the Omni, so I think quickly you'll figure that out, I bet.
Yeah, I don't know everything about sports, but I do know some things.
I think you're on your way to knowing a whole heck of a lot.
Well, thank you very much, sir. Okay, anyways, next question. Do you have a sporting event that is on your bucket list that you haven't attended yet?
Sporting event on my bucket list.
Yep.
There isn't really one that comes to mind. I enjoy all sports. I love college football. I love professional football too. And there's not a better way on Saturday and to catch all the games in front of your TV with a lot of great food. So the Saturday afternoons of college football are special. I went to so many games, and participated in so many games. They're hard to get to, and they're hard to get around at times. So I prefer just checking out a lot of sports, whether it's golf or college football or pro football. I really enjoy watching those on TV, actually.
Very cool. So any other stories you think our listeners would like to know?
Any special stories? In what aspect? Give me an aspect and something will come to mind.
Just, anything, man. Like,
anything?
Yeah.
Okay.
Just the most interesting one you have, maybe.
So, most of the most interesting ones, way back, without cell phones, and going on the road recruiting, very, very difficult, because when I was at the Citadel in the 90s, or at Furman in the late 90s, anytime you'd have to get to Ohio, most of those places, or Indiana, or a lot of the places that we were recruiting, those were all drives, and there wasn't cell phones. So, a 9-hour drive or a 10-hour drive to Ohio, it might end up being 13 hours, because you'd have to stop at the rest stops and have a lot of quarters and get on the phone at times to check in with your boss and so forth. So I just remember early in recruiting at certain schools, when you go back to the payphone days, recruiting was a lot harder to communicate with people. No text, no cell phones. It was straight quarters into the payphone when you were on the road recruiting, which was something that most younger coaches and younger people right now, they laugh at, probably wouldn't even think about very much.
Very interesting, very interesting, very interesting. So, on this podcast, we are all sports fanatics. So the last question we ask, as a fan, what do you think is the all-time greatest moment in sports?
All-time greatest moments in sports to me, because I'm a Pittsburgh Steeler, I grew up in Pittsburgh, is the Immaculate Reception. Bradshaw to Harris, that set the tone for Pittsburgh Steeler football for 50 years.
Very interesting.
It was, a special play that sort of captivated the city and sort of put a stamp on, the team at that point, way back, I guess in the 70s. And the special thing about that is sometimes you have to get a little bit lucky, and a lucky break can just put you on a path that reaches unbelievable heights. So that I would think that in my mind, just because I'm such a Steeler fan, that would be the number one.
Great answer. Great answer. All right, well, thank you for your time, my good sir. All right, fanatics, I hope you enjoyed this week's episode of The Fan and Fanatic. Thank you for joining us, and thank you for all of your support. Don't forget to follow or subscribe, or whatever your podcast app says to do, and you can follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. For my broadcast partner, Ryan Grelecki, this is Parker Grelecki saying, game, set, match!